Welcome to Curiosity on the Move, where we prove it's never too late to learn something new. I'm Lee, and I'm on a mission to try things I've always wondered about and to take you along for the ride. The world is full of skills, sports, hobbies, and adventures just waiting for curious minds like ours. And here's the bonus: learning new things isn't just fun, it's one of the best ways to keep our brains healthy and engaged as we age. So, whether you're looking for a new passion, a way to meet people, or just want to keep that mental sharpness, you're in the right place. This week, I decided to do something a little different, and we're talking about flower arranging. Now, in most of my previous episodes, I talk about the social aspect of the things that I do, and flower arranging doesn't seem like a group effort, but in this case, I made it one. I decided I wanted to have a launch party. I am so very excited to have launched this podcast. I am so thrilled to be talking to all y'all. And I thought it would be a good idea to kill two birds with one stone and find something that I could do to create another episode for y'all, as well as gather my friends. So I brought together my friends who I work with, who have been super supportive of me, friends from my curling community, friends from my mahjong community, my padel companion, and all these folks from my previous episodes got together with me at Bloomtown Flower Market for a flower arranging workshop. Now, I had discovered Bloomtown Flower Market a number of years ago. They opened very close to my home. My youngest daughter loves flowers and is much more creative than I am. She likes to create her own bouquets, and Bloomtown, as a flower market, has their own refrigerator where you can go in and pick individual blooms. She loved to go into that refrigerator and pick the various colors, the shapes, the sizes, and the smells, of course, were fabulous. You didn't want to leave it. Although, yes, it's very cold. At one point, she thought she would even apply for a summer job there. That didn't happen, but regardless, she loved to create her own individual bouquets. That's not something that I could hope to do. I don't have a creative bone in my body when it comes to something like flower arranging. But this is also a place that, while they have their own refrigerator and you can go in and pick your own stems, you can also have them make the arrangements for you. So, of course, this is something I chose to do. And for several birthday parties and other events, I had Bloomtown make the arrangements for me. Absolutely lovely. I've never been more impressed. They were so fabulous. So, before doing this workshop, my own experience has been rather limited. I do want to say, though, that way back when, if anyone remembers 1984, I was living in Japan at the time, and our teachers felt it was important for us to learn certain Japanese cultural activities, one of which was ikebana. So, ikebana is a form of Japanese flower arrangement. It's very simple, very elegant, very sparse. I don't recall very much, but there is an object called a frog, which is a flat, either, plate or brick with a bunch of pins or nails in which the stems would stick. I remember there being a rule of threes. You had something highest in the back of the arrangement to represent the heavens, something in the middle to represent humanity, and something at the low point which represented the earth. And I vaguely remember that you needed to have three stems for each one, for the highest, the middle, and the lowest. I could be wrong. That could have just been a particular variety of ikebana. I'm sure there's many ways to do ikebana. But that was my only flower arranging experience, and it was far too long ago to really remember anything. Obviously, I didn't expect this workshop to be anything like Ikebana, but it was something I was very curious about and very excited to do. But on top of doing the workshop, I also wanted to learn a little bit more about the business side of running a flower shop, a flower market, and doing these workshops, the whole experience of it all. So I sat down and spoke with one of the owners, Liz Ewald, about the business. When did you open the business? Was that the first time
Yeah.
Bloomtown was
So that was
Bloomtown?
May of 2022
Okay.
is when that opened. And then we moved here January of 25. So we've been in our new space for just a little over a year.
And what made you want to open Bloomtown Flower Market?
So Cece and I met through mutual friends, and I was kind of coming out of the restaurant industry for almost 20 years, not sure what I wanted to do. And she had Cece Bloom, her florist shop, so I was working with her there, thinking I was going to do kind of like some office work. And one day we just got to talking about how much we both love flowers and how it would be so cool to have something where people can play with flowers and learn. Also, we didn't have a flower market in Mount Pleasant. Everything was over the bridge, so it was making flowers more accessible to people on this side of town. And that conversation went fast. I think like within a few months we were signing a lease.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So we got very excited and wheels started spinning, and yeah, it was one of those magical things that just came to.
That seems a bit of a jump from
Yes.
the restaurant industry into flowers.
You know, we say all the time that there's so many similarities because you've got like front of the house, back of the house. Like we've got our side of the cooler that's just for us, whereas like there's the retail side of things, there's the wholesale side of things. Customer service obviously is a huge factor that's carried over. Running out of product, it really does transfer.
That's neat. That's neat to know. So you do have your shop at cooler, and I've been in there plenty of times, and I love going in there. I am not real creative when it comes to flowers, which is why doing this workshop tonight is going to be fabulous for me because I need to learn some things. But what inspired you to just make the cooler where people can come in and just get individual stems and create their own?
Sure. So the cooler is probably like the flower market part of it, where people can come in and buy flowers in bulk. And that's how most flower markets operate. You're buying flowers in bulk. We wanted to do it a little differently by offering people a single stem and half bunch option so that you're not committed to buying a whole bunch of something if you're just wanting a few of this and a few of that. Whereas like in the grocery store, you have to buy that bunch. Everywhere else, you have to buy a full bunch of something. We give you the option to just get a few of these and a few of these. So you can build your bouquet however you like.
The second owner of the shop is Cece Nichols. She unfortunately couldn't stay with us the night of the party. However, she was so kind to respond to written questions in advance. So I had asked her that when people are standing in the cooler and they're just completely overwhelmed with options, what guidance does she give them? And then for that person who doesn't believe they're creative, like myself, how does buying individual stems change the experience? So Cece responded that she first asks what's the occasion and who are the flowers for. They are then able to assess the recipient's style and preferences, and then they can make suggestions with the customer's budget to attain that perfect selection. And while they offer the individual stems for convenience, they do tend to promote buying flowers in bunches to get more bang for your buck. The more you buy, the more affordable each stem becomes. And as far as creativity, most customers are initially either uninterested or uncomfortable with the do it yourself approach, but they typically jump on board pretty quickly when they find out they can save money just by assisting with the design aspect. So, by stripping the stems of leaves, making a few guided flower cuts, The customers realize how easy and super fun floral design can be. So Cece says 99% of the time they walk out the door, flowers in hand, with a feeling of accomplishment and pride. So I asked Liz the same questions.
Um, so I think by giving them the choice to do individual stems, they feel like they have more freedom, if that makes sense, to design. And so it's not like, well, when you buy a bunch, you're generally getting 10 stems. So I can only get 3 bunches because that's 30 stems, and I'm only going to have these 3 different flowers. Whereas if I am allowed to do single stems, I might get 2 stems of this, 2 stems of that. Now I've got 10 different flowers in my vase. And it just gives you a little more depth and assortment, variety.
And if someone like me, generally, because when I have come in, I've come in for several birthdays to have whole things made. Y'all did my daughter's 18th birthday this past May. We call it her wedding reception because it was unbelievable. But the flowers, and Cece said she remembered it too when we came in last year. It was a whole rigmarole. It was hysterical. But yes, she got an awful lot. It was very nice. But I had you all make them. So for someone like me who doesn't want to make my own arrangement, what services do you offer?
So you are just like probably 75% of the people that walk through the door. They think they're not creative. They don't want anything to do with the process. They just want to leave with beautiful flowers. Because we are DIY, we try to give you a little nudge of, oh, you could do it. And there's a group of people who take that nudge and are like, all right, I'll give it a try. But for those who say, nope, I just want to pick it up, absolutely, we offer that service. We can make anything that you need, be it floral arrangements, garlands, wreaths, for a wedding, for a birthday party, for a baby shower. We just don't deliver. So that's where it's a little different from a florist, because anything that we make, you just have to pick up.
And do you find, like, demographically there's a division between people who like to come in and make their own arrangements versus the people who just would like you to do it for them?
No. It is all over. There are some men who come in and they go straight back to the cooler. They grab their flowers, they set up at a workstation, and they put together their bouquet, and they don't need anything from me. And then you'll get someone who comes in and says, this is how much money I have. She likes the color purple. I'm going to go make a phone call in my car while you get it ready. So it's really complete extreme ends, and who's in what camp really doesn't have anything to do demographically, which is interesting.
So if they pick their own from the cooler, you allow them to use the workspace here to actually,
yes,
outside of doing a separate workshop, and we'll talk about workshops in a bit, but you'll just let them use the space to be able to create their bouquet here.
So someone who just comes in, shops the cooler, the workstations are available for you to use free of charge. If you place a pre-order with us and you're going to be here for a few hours making arrangements for an event, then for that we do charge a $34.95 workstation rental fee, and that's for the whole day.
So other than the flowers that are here, there's obviously gifts and vases. What else do you sell in the store?
We have lots of vases, but we also allow people to bring in their own vases when filling, when designing. So just wanted to throw that in there. But yes, we have vases, we have lots of artificial stems, we have dried flowers. We are working on bulking up our gifts section, little things like hand purses, trinket dishes, hats, things like that.
Perfect. You heard in our conversation about flowers for birthdays and weddings, but one of the questions I had asked Cece is, yes, flowers are tied to major life events, but what about the just because bouquet? And I love her answer. Cece said they love a just because customer. They're so thrilled to be involved in creating someone's happy day, even if they don't know who they are. but I will quote, and I love this so much: flowers are about being present, being thoughtful, and being kind. I really enjoyed talking to Liz about the business itself and reading Cece's answers, but they also offer workshops. So I asked Liz about the workshops they offer, as well as the private workshops you can request, such as the one I was about to participate in. And then I say tonight I've got a group of women coming in that we're doing a flower arranging workshop. And this is something you offer both. You hold workshops on a regular basis, but you also do private workshops as well.
So, yes, we don't tend to have scheduled workshops on a very regular basis. It's more geared towards holidays. So, like around Christmas, we'll do a wreath workshop. I think we're looking into doing something for Easter, like a cute Easter themed wreath maybe. For Valentine's, we did a Galentine's event. So to tell you the truth, when we first opened, workshops were not a big hit, and we had a lot of scheduled workshops and nobody was really signing up for them. So we kind of stopped putting energy into that and just made it okay, it's whatever you want it to be. And since doing that within the last year, workshops have really picked up. So I think maybe now that we've seen an increased interest in the workshops, that might be something that we start adding onto our schedule.
And so, as someone like me who's never formally arranged flowers, I'll caveat that with I have done ikebana in the past. That was something I've done a lot of years ago. And I know that's a very specific sort of flower arranging, but I struggle. I'm horrible at this. But so what makes flower or floral design more approachable than someone like me might think?
So I think first is telling people it's just like art. There's nothing that's necessarily right or wrong. It's what you like. So you might like something that your friend doesn't like. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. You guys just have different tastes in flowers. There's really just a few key principles in floral arranging that we teach you. And honestly, I feel like within the first 10 minutes of going through a workshop with somebody, you can just see their shoulders relax. It's like they realize this isn't a test. I'm not being graded. It's meant to be fun.
Sure. So what is the biggest misconception that beginners have when they come into their first workshop?
Biggest misconception.
And it might play into really the answer you just previously gave about that it's not this contest and that doesn't have to be perfect and there isn't any particular form, but is there anything else?
No, just that I think thinking that there has to be a certain way to do something and there really isn't. There's so many different floral designs. There's tight and compact. There's loose and whimsical. One of my favorites is asymmetrical. So teaching people the different styles and techniques is a lot of fun.
And is there a common beginner mistake that people make, and how do you guide people through that process?
I think the biggest mistake people make is cutting their stems too short. Another thing is people want to just grab all their stems, cut them, leave them on the table, and then start to put them in. The science of flowers is that it really only takes 10 seconds for all the little passageways in that stem to close up. So if you put a stem in that doesn't have a fresh cut, he might still be getting water, but he's not getting nearly as much water as he would if you gave him a fresh cut. So we are very strict about, please make sure you give your flower a fresh cut because we want you to get the longest life out of your flowers. So by giving it that angled fresh cut right before it goes into the water, you're making sure it gets the most water absorbed. As far as the height, I always tell everybody we can make them shorter, but we can't make them longer. So just if you're not sure, just cut it a little bit longer than you think you might want because you can always pull it out and you can make it shorter.
And what tends to surprise people when they start arranging?
How fun it is. Yeah.
Good.
I think what we hit on before was that people think it's so serious. And once you realize that it's just about having fun and you're not being judged or critiqued and there's no right or wrong way, and you start to see yourself create something, I think then it becomes fun, especially in a group with your girlfriends. And it's like, oh, wait, this is fun. Why don't we do this more often?
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. So I appreciate it. And that probably addresses as well then, what happens to people once they settle into this process, that they really just are kind of opening up, finding the fun in it, the creativity maybe is finally flowing for someone like me who doesn't believe they're creative in the least. So do you see these students then, as they're going through these workshops, really gain some confidence?
Absolutely. That's probably one of our favorite parts, and why we do this is to see people go from coming in the front door with, I'm not artistic, I can't do it, you're just going to have to do it for me, to walking out with something that they've made and they're just like beaming with pride. That's probably one of my favorite parts about this job.
Going back to some of the questions I sent to Cece, and she was so kind to respond to, I had asked her what was the first thing they teach beginners about composition. Was it shape, balance, or color? And she responded that proportions make a large role in the overall design. So, creating a general idea of the shape or style of the design from the beginning with the greenery depicts how the final product will look, keeping in mind that the proportions of the vessel to the floral ratio is also key. And before my workshop got started that evening, I asked Liz one last question. Right. And lastly, what advice would you give someone who's hesitant about trying this?
I would say just come in and let us help you, and we'll show you how fun it is.
Good. And to that same question, Cece also said, come give it a try. She said, you may learn it's not for you, but you may develop a new hobby, passion, or even trade. The workshop itself was so much fun. I'll do my best to paint a picture since it's something you can't see. We were all at separate stations with all of the tools that we needed, along with a giant bucket filled with flowers. The colors and smells were amazing. And then there was a recipe. And the recipe is just a guide for which flowers should be placed before others. We had a leader who walked us through that recipe as well as giving us tips on how to make the arrangements last. Everyone was laughing and enjoying themselves. And that made me think of how arranging flowers, or just flowers themselves, affect mental health. I came across an article from the NC State Extension at NC State University in North Carolina that talks about therapeutic horticulture. Now, that's a term I'd never heard before, but the article says that therapeutic horticulture uses gardening and plant related activities to promote mental, physical, and emotional well being. Research has shown it to be effective in reducing stress, anxiety, and depression, as well as improving cognitive function and motor skills. And the article went on to say that flower arranging is a therapeutic horticulture activity that can be used to help people with a variety of conditions, including mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety, physical disabilities such as stroke or spinal cord injury, and cognitive impairments such as dementia and Alzheimer's. A separate study I found was out of Rutgers in New Jersey from 2005, where the team of researchers looked at the link between flowers and life satisfaction. And the results of that study show that one, flowers have an immediate impact on happiness. Two, flowers have a long term positive effect on moods. And three, flowers make intimate connections. that just the presence of flowers led to increased contact with family and friends. So, as quoted, common sense tells us that flowers make us happy. These sorts of creative hands-on activities, such as flower arranging, I think it's obvious that it would stimulate cognitive engagement. You have to focus on what you're doing. You have to plan what flowers you're going to use in what order, what heights, and have this spatial awareness of how things fit, the balance, the contrast, all of these. So while it might be a little low stakes in the problem solving, it is an exercise for the mind. Obviously, hosting this event was very meaningful. I loved that my friends who've been supporting me through this process were able to come and experience this with me. Having these groups meet each other, these women didn't know each other beforehand. So it was really neat to watch all those areas of my life come together in one place. I want to give a huge thank you to Liz and Cece for letting me interview them, and a huge thank you to all my friends who were able to come and attend. It really was a lot of fun, and I walked away with a phenomenal bouquet. I hope you'll think about doing this yourself. Reach out to Liz and Cece at Bloomtown Flower Market. They're on Houston Northcutt in Mount Pleasant. Their website is bloomtownflowermarket.com, and they can be found on Instagram at Bloomtown Flower Market. Thank y'all for listening. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. This was so much fun to do. I'm so excited to do it again in the future. Next up, I'm going to try my best to get y'all a hurling episode for St. Patrick's Day. I thought doing something Irish would be appropriate. Again, feedback is appreciated. Please share with your friend if you liked this episode. I can be found on Instagram at Curiosity on the Move. Feel free to DM me if you have any comments or if you have any other ideas you'd like to see in upcoming episodes. You can also check out photos from the workshop. I truly appreciate your time. Thank y'all so much for listening.